what would you argue keeps someone from breaking into your home?
Yeah, addressing the issues on why they're breaking in the home in the first place. Housing, education, job placement. We have a whole class of folks who've been convicted of felonies in our country who have been deemed second-class citizens, and it's incredibly difficult for them to get stable housing and get good jobs.
Welcome to Criminal Injustice, the podcast that pulls back the curtains on America's broken legal system. I'm your host, Krizman, defense attorney and former criminal defendant. I fight in the trenches for those who have been caught up in the machinery of the criminal injustice system. And in each episode, I sit down with experts, advocates, and community leaders who are with me in the trenches, fighting the system and working to make the lives of the criminally accused better every day. We don't just complain about the situation. We focus on solutions and concrete actions we all can take to help fix this broken system. The fight against criminal injustice starts now. Welcome back to Criminal Injustice. We have with us today Kyle Giddings. He's the Deputy Director of the Colorado Criminal Justice Reform Coalition. He's been there for 3.5 years, and the coalition has been affecting change here in Colorado since 1999. Kyle's a Colorado native with family roots in Trinidad and the San Luis Valley. He just came off a busy time at the legislature, and we're excited to hear about what he's been doing to fight against criminal injustice. Welcome, Kyle.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, I've been with CCJRC for 3.5 years now on everything, but Christy, who is our founding ED,
Gotcha.
She's been here the whole ride. So they ran a bill to say we won't build any more prisons, and it went down in flames of glory. Colorado used to be really red back in the day, and no one wanted to listen. But after running that first piece of legislation, it was clear as okay, people want this. People, community wants to organize around this. So our ED stepped into the space, organized, and that's where the Colorado Criminal Justice Reform Coalition came from. And we've been going ever since, doing sentencing reform. Now 25 years later, 7 prisons have closed because of our sentencing reform. 7, yeah, 4 privates and 3 state prisons.
Are there any that are currently on the list that you're trying to get out?
I would love to, but we're actually almost right back to where we were now. From 99, Colorado's on the verge of having to build the first prison in 22 years because of policy choices from the governor's office as well as within the Department of Corrections.
What are those policy choices that are leading to that?
For sure. So we passed a law in 2018 called the Prison Population Management Bill. Okay. So what it is, it passed unanimously out of both chambers and was signed by Governor Hickenlooper. And what it did was, if the vacancy level within the Department of Corrections drops below 3%, then it triggers all these mechanisms to put people that are within 30 days of their parole eligibility date into community. Let's just start letting people that are just sitting while we're waiting to go out. Let's put them back into community. It also does a survey of all the halfway house beds and figure out what is available. And people that are eligible to go into those beds need to start being placed into those beds. And we do that until we go above 3% again for 30 days consistently, as well as people that are within their mandatory release date anyway, 30 days.
So you want more than 3% vacancy in the prisons.
Yeah.
And if there is, if there's not, then quote, open the floodgates.
Let's open the floodgates. People that are close to being out anyway, let's get them out.
But it's not the floodgates, and that's my next question. Some folks who are listening and watching Court TV all the time, right? Yeah. They're saying, no, you got to spend that time, and it's already a parole eligibility date. It's reduced. There's no truth in sentencing. Why are we letting these people out earlier? Yeah. What's your argument there?
Yeah, my response is these people are already slated to be let out because these are folks that are low-level offenses. These aren't the people that are committing first-degree murder or any of those. These are people that are usually in there for drug charges or some low-level violent crimes, but usually crimes of passion. Right. And so these are individuals that are have proven to the parole board already that they are working on themselves, working on being a better citizen, and we're ready to return to community. And so what the prison population mechanisms do is just cut out the red tape and the in between and get people back into community and back home. 95% of people who are in prison right now will go home one day.
Right.
And so it's just like we are helping create not only a better life for the people that are stuck inside of the Department of Corrections, but also it's helped the staff within the Department of Corrections, because if they're overpopulated, that means they're already stretched super thin, and their vacancy rate across all of DOC is 18%. So they're already low staffed. There's no programs right now really in the Department of Corrections. There's actually a lawsuit just filed related to treatment for sex offenders, because there's a great deal of folks that are way past their parole eligibility date who just can't get treatment. And so that's the only thing holding them up.
And it's not because they won't take the treatment. It's because they can't get it.
DOC isn't offering it. Yeah.
So I want to go back to something that you mentioned there in terms of, 95% of folks are going to be released.
Yeah.
And we want that, right?
Yeah.
These are, I think sometimes Americans want to shield themselves, and that's kind of what the prison system has done in the evolution of it since the Middle Ages and the Renaissance, et cetera. But they want to shield themselves from what they believe to be the bad guys. But the reality is most people aren't bad guys. They made a mistake. Now they're paying for it.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about parole eligibility date, and we're cutting folks off early, and I know I'm kind of getting deep in here.
Let's do it.
But those are folks that are going to get out soon anyway, right? It's not we're suddenly commuting sentences.
No, there's no commuting sentences. And the parole board still has the full authority to be like, this person is not actually ready. But if they have proven to the parole board that they're ready, they have their parole plan approved, they have a place to go, they're ready to go, the mechanisms just cut out all the red tape and send people home. And help stabilize the prison population. And Governor Polis has also been doing some shenanigans at the county jail level too. So when you're
talk about that,
when you're sentenced in the Department of Corrections, you wait in the county jail until someone comes and picks you up to take you to DOC. And so that's called jail backlog. And usually there's like 100 to 200 people in jail backlog for new court commitments, parole violations, that kind of stuff. Right now, there's almost 600 people in jail backlog because Governor Polis was working really hard to avoid the prison population measures from going into effect. Because he was like, well, I don't want to let these people out. I think that's a bad idea, blah, blah, blah. But it was a law unanimously passed, super bipartisan. And
so are you telling me that he's not enforcing the law right now?
He was manipulating the situation. And luckily, he could only manipulate it so far. And so the prison population mechanisms went into effect last Saturday. And so parole board is starting to review all these cases, starting to make a list of folks that are eligible to go out and go.
And is this, and I'm sorry if I'm confused.
You're good.
Is this the first time that this bill is being implemented?
It's ever been gone into effect. Passed in 2018, but this is the first time it's ever gone into effect.
And what was the holdup there?
We never got to 3%. We never got to 3% before, but one of the policy choices made by the Department of Corrections as well as Governor Polis, because Governor Polis in the end is the boss of the Department of Corrections, he appoints the director, he gives directives, is that the largest population of folks that are going into prison right now are technical parole violations, not new felonies. On a technical, you can commit a misdemeanor, but people shouldn't be going to prison for committing misdemeanors. And so the male population technical violations are up 20%. For women, it's 27%. And actually new court commitments for felony convictions is down 3%.
That's good.
Yeah, it's great. Great news. But because they're putting so many people in for technical violations, even though we've written laws to give them the flexibility not to, they made the decision to do that. And that's what's driving the increase in prison.
On the other side, is it possible that that maybe this is just a leading indicator that things will get better going forward in terms of progress we've made in the criminal we're sending fewer people to prison. Unfortunately, more of them had been caught on the hook before. Going forward, there'll be fewer on the hook.
Yeah, that's the hope. But there's some real threats out there. We can do only so much at the legislature. But we have Advance Colorado, which is a right-wing think tank and political action group here in Colorado, run by Michael Fields, that is really driving the tough on crime narrative that is like kind of taking hold after 2024, where we passed Prop 128, which was truth in sentencing for folks with certain violent convictions, and then the $350 million for police. Both were Michael Fields. Michael Fields was also behind the school choice. He was behind a million different things. It's pretty much a like a wish list for conservatives of what they can't get done at the legislature.
So let me jump in on that because you know, I had opinions. I came out against both of those bills, as I will 100 times out of 100.
Yeah.
But at the same time, when I'm looking at it from a pragmatic standpoint, the 85% rule that went into play, it's hard to defend those convictions when you're talking to the voting population. You say that they shouldn't do 85% or more of their time when we're talking about the charges that were specifically tied up. What were the talking points prior to the election, and what's your argument now?
For sure, yeah. So prior to the election, had lots of conversations with folks, and just a lot of education around the fact that these folks already have to serve 75% of their sentence. But when we take away the incentive for earn time, which is what this ballot initiative did, we know what happens because we can look to Arizona that has the almost exact same law on the books already around those same crimes, took away earned time before you serve 85% of your sentence. And violence went up inside of prisons. Engagement in programs went down in prison. And so when you take away the ability for people to have like an end goal and a vision of like when I can go home without you eliminate the incentive for people to sit inside and work on themselves. And when I have conversations with my conservative brothers and sisters about crime, I ask them to be serious about crime because locking up people isn't serious about crime. What's serious about crime is addressing root causes and addressing what is causing people to commit crime. How do we, community absolutely has a right to respond to harm when it happens. But how do we stop it from escalating? How do we stop people from causing more harm? And how do we respect the victims? And how do we reduce recidivism once those people are on the other side of their sentence? And that's like how we are serious about crime. Locking people up is the least serious way to deal with crime.
Do they agree with you when you have those conversations?
When I have those conversations, we do like reach a good point, honestly. They're like, okay, that like makes sense. Like, you know, we have created a lot of community grant programs in at the state level that funds like violence interruption, as well as
what? I'm sorry.
Violence interruption. Yeah, as well as like helps.
What do you mean by violence interruption?
Yeah, so like stopping youth involvement in gangs, that kind of stuff, and then also we created like a grant program that serves underserved victims, which is like usually the BIPOC community, men, as well as young adults are usually very underserved victims of crime. So we created a grant program to support them. But then we also created a grant program called Wages, which is the like go-to reentry programs across the state that the DOC funds directly. And so we point to these things that we're doing that have real data showing that people are really avoiding the criminal justice system or have really low recidivism rates when we invest directly into community resources. So investing into the Reentry Center that's down the street from here versus funding another parole office.
Indeed.
Yeah.
That makes a ton of sense. And I think, you know, when we say common sense reform, right? That's kind of the stuff that it seems like if you can get someone down at the dinner table, folks can agree on stuff like that. I mean, I just asked if that was your experience with your family, but talk to me on like on a lobbying level or on a policy level. What are you seeing at the Capitol right now?
Oh man, what am I seeing at the Capitol right now?
What is their willingness to work with you on these things, and what is the temperature there? Indeed,
for sure. So after the last year's election, I would say people were really skittish around doing some reform. We had some really basic legislation to like help folks deal with the short timer problem inside the Department of Corrections. So people that are going into prison who may have already a lot of earned time from either the halfway house or pretrial confinement time. And so they're going into prison after their parole eligibility dates. And so like that's mayhem for not only that person, but also the Department of Corrections.
Entire administration process.
Exactly. So we proposed a bill that would just give other options besides prisons when people are revoked from the halfway house or revoked from parole to place them into or probation even, place them into sober living communities or wagey reentry sites so we can have wraparound services for a lot of these folks instead of plopping them out of their lives, sticking them in the Department of Corrections. They get there, they're past their parole eligibility date, and so they go to the parole board. Parole board's like, you've been here for 45 minutes, you have to stay. And then also they can't get programs because programs are given out to people within the Department of Corrections by how long their sentence are. You're only there for 13 months, you're not getting any programs. So they're just sitting there having their whole life ripped to pieces, losing their job, losing their housing usually, and have nowhere to go. And that bill, Governor Polis wouldn't even let out of the House. He put pressure on leadership to stop them from moving it forward. We had the votes in the House, we had the votes in the Senate, but Governor Polis said it was soft on crime.
Okay, so let's talk about Governor Polis. I had higher hopes.
Yeah.
What's going on recently?
Great question. If you figure it out, let me know.
Set it up for us. Talk to us about, kind of where he's let the justice reform community down recently, and tell us maybe why you think that's occurring.
Yeah, I can give a few examples. So not only with our bill 1214,
and we know about the Muni Fairness Bill.
That was going to be my next one.
Been all over that. Yeah, so, and then after that, or those are the two big ones.
Those are the two big ones from this last session. Which were, the interesting thing is that Governor Polis was the one with the Muni bill that said it'd be great if all these sentences were standardized. 2 years ago he said that, and we're like, here you go, and he's like, no thanks.
Why do you think that someone that we thought was in our corner for some time is suddenly giving us some curveballs here and saying, or taking what we would consider to be pro-law enforcement stance? What's going on?
Yeah, because he came out and endorsed Prop 130, the money for cops, the $350 million that the state didn't have, and he took a neutral position on 128, saying, "Oh, I think the parole board should have the right to decide," but like it supported increasing sentences, which is just the complete opposite of what he ran on. When he first ran, he ran on closing all the private prisons and never contracting with them. And now he's put the state in a position where we may have to build or open a new prison for the first time. And, I think, so Governor Polis signed an executive order during COVID to let folks out that was so broad that we wouldn't have even signed it because it was like, hey, this is not a responsible way to do this. What we were asking them to do was like, hey, let's let folks out. Absolutely. People that are ill, sick, that shouldn't be locked up in a COVID situation. We should be working on getting them placements. But there was kind of a swarm of people that got out. And there was a couple times where individuals were let out and then proceeded to go commit new crimes and committed murder. And so I think once that happened, he shifted pretty dramatically towards being, let's not let people out. I don't have that on my title.
Were those the folks that he let out under the executive order?
Under the executive order. Yeah. So I think I think that really hit him pretty hard. That someone that he was directly responsible for letting out murdered someone. And no qualms on that. Like, I get that. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't look on what actually reduces the prison population, especially when people aren't getting programs, when the staff within the Department of Corrections is completely stressed out. People are dying, guards, because they are falling asleep behind the wheel because they've worked so many shifts. We have case managers that are doing room shakedowns and GED teachers that are having to do parole setups. It's just crazy.
Well, and we also have, getting back to, the release early and even just changing the incentive to get that earned time. When you have folks who don't, well, look at it this way, the prison employee population does not want life without parole inmates, right? Because there's no disincentive to not commit crimes. If they had a voice, if prison employees were able to write the headlines, what do you think they would say about prison populations?
Yeah, I think they would say there's a crisis in DOC. And we actually put out a report 2 years ago called The Crisis in DOC that was signed on by Colorado Winds, who's the union that represents all the prison guards, as well as One Voice United, which is the National Prison Guard union. Both signed on being like,
but they're unions. Come on.
I know. Don't get me started. No.
And it hasn't gotten better for them.
Hasn't gotten better for them. And they've put $300 million over the last couple of years into staff recruitment within the Department of Corrections. and have made very little headway. They've recruited a lot more prison guards, but like medical staff, program staff is still abysmal rates of having placements. And Stansel, who's the current director of DOC, said even in a hearing, it is unlikely that they will return to the 2020 levels of staffing ever.
Wow.
And so we agree. And so how do we manage the population and that's going into the Department of Corrections in a way that is actually like healthy for the people going in and the people that are working within the Department of Corrections?
Let's talk. I want to talk about what we're going to fight against before we talk about what we're going to fight for.
Yeah.
You mentioned Advanced Colorado.
Yeah.
Kind of nemesis number one right
Yeah.
now.
100%.
Talk to me about what they and he are doing and what you're doing to combat it.
Yeah. So Advanced Colorado has already put forward several ballot initiatives that they're collecting signatures on one. We're waiting for them to start collecting signatures on the other, and any day now.
Right.
But
I saw the fentanyl possession. They
that's
tried to get me to sign it at the farmer's market this weekend.
Pretty terrifying stuff. I don't know if you had a chance to read it, but it's pretty scary.
I did, and they also, just for everyone out there, they package it like it's legit criminal justice reform when it's the wolf in sheep's clothing.
100%.
So continue. Please tell us.
Yeah.
How so? How is it the wolves in sheep clothing?
Yeah, for sure. They created with this ballot initiative, they created a new DF4, so drug felony 4 for the listeners. I know we could talk probably legal all day, but
let's talk about wobblers, actually.
Yeah, there we go. Oh gosh. This would eliminate the wobbler actually for fentanyl possession, as well as eliminate the knowingly clause within fentanyl possession. So the drug supply is super unregulated, obviously. So people don't know they have fentanyl.
For sure.
And what they're proposing is eliminating that. So creating more felonies there.
Right. Let me jump in real quick and just say, so essentially a wobbler is you're charged with a felony. And if you successfully complete your probationary sentence, then that actual conviction will drop down to a misdemeanor.
Mm-hmm.
And so there are still going to be wobblers, but because there's an emphasis in fentanyl or on fentanyl, what they're saying is if you possess fentanyl, that cannot wobble down even after a successful misdemeanor probationary sentence. And you no longer have to, quote, know that you possessed it.
Yeah.
So it's just there's no culpable mental state?
No.
You just have to possess fentanyl.
You have to just possess it, knowingly or unknowingly. Yep, no more wobbling. Yeah. So they created a new DF4, which is mandatory treatment, which is how I think they're going to package it. It's like, we're going to try to get everyone treatment.
Mandatory
treatment.
DF4, so okay, gotcha.
But but that's the only DF4. Everything then it jumps straight up to like a 3 and only 2s and then a 1. Like several layers of 2s too.
Okay.
And so it's lowering all the thresholds for cut rates and for fentanyl possession.
Well, and I think, let's not lose track because you and I are operating from the same basis. And we need to know who the audience and who we need to persuade are. So they want fentanyl to be eradicated from the streets. They want there to be solutions.
Yeah.
And I think what we need to focus on is why is elevating the convictions, the felony rates, the prison rates, why is that the wrong way?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, so what this proposition will do is turn everyday drug users who are just struggling within the world of addiction into felons and turn them into easy prison sentences. Which is, like we've already talked about, there's no treatment within the Department of Corrections. All we're going to do is load up the Department of Corrections, a whole group of people, and then...
and they make better criminals, right? That's not... If there's no rehabilitation in the prison system, then you're just putting criminals in a cage where they talk about the crimes that they committed, and then they come back out, and they're expected to not violate parole.
Yeah, exactly. With no drug treatment, not treating their underlying addiction problems or anything like that. It creates mandatory minimums for distribution up to 32 years, as well as manufacturing, just possession of manufacturing equipment.
Okay.
So what they do is they run a bill at the legislature that's almost identical to what they run on the ballot. It loses there because the Dems control both House and Senate Judiciary, and they're like, hey, this is actually not productive, so we're not going to pass this. They go in there, do a bunch of media around it, and they're like, the Dems aren't like, they're not passing the bills that need to be passed to deal with these problems, so we're going to put it on the ballot. This new proposition was literally a bill last year, Senate Bill 44. And now it's a proposition. So that's just the fentanyl one.
Right. And exactly. And I get excited on that fentanyl one. It pisses me off. And I deal mostly with felonies in what I do these days. But let's talk about the theft charges and the bond and all of that.
Yeah. So they also have one that lowers all the financial thresholds for theft. So creating oodles and oodles of more felonies. Also sentence enhancers if the crime is committed with more than one person. And so I think they're trying to create this, like, you know, these videos people see of smash and grabs at like Walgreens and stuff like that, and trying to create a lot of buzz around that.
Okay. And is that actually an epidemic, or
no,
is that
it's
part of
not.
the headline?
It's part of the headline. Organizations like Target and Walmart and Walgreens came out and be like, I know we're like hyping this up, but admitted in Congress that this isn't like a thing that's actually happening that much. It happens, but it's not happening as much that it needs a ballot initiative to increase penalties.
Talk to me about the bond.
Yeah.
The bond initiative.
So the bond initiative is where it would ban people who are being charged with certain violent crimes from being eligible for a PR bond. And so it takes all the discretion away from the judge from looking at the situation and being like, hey, this is like, yes, they were charged with this, but this is the circumstance. So maybe they do deserve a bond. And it puts there has to be, I think, a minimum of $5,000 bond.
And this is for violent crimes only?
Only certain violent crimes. I can't quote them right off the top of my head because I've been so focused on the fentanyl and the theft stuff. But that was a bill as well.
These would be enumerated crimes of violence, part of that statute, and a certain subsection of those are not eligible for PR bonds.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're taking away the judge's discretion on all three of these.
Yeah.
You're taking away the ability for the folks that we deem the wisest and determine life sentences or no. You're saying we need you to follow these specific rules in these subsets because we don't trust you.
Yeah.
That seems very much like it's treating the symptom and not the cause.
Yeah, 100% is only, it's very reactionary. It doesn't actually address what is happening in our communities. It doesn't address, it might feel on the outside warm and fuzzy, make your tummy feel better about crime in our communities, but it doesn't actually address crime in our communities at all. It just disappears it for only a few years and then it comes back.
And Michel Foucault the philosopher has a great, the birthplace of the prison, where he talks about essentially how we've been able to shutter ourselves, and I mentioned this earlier, but we're able to disappear the crime and not think about it. Or pretend like our side of the street is clean as long as it's on the other side. And then you hit it exactly. Very rarely does that ever stop your house from being burglarized.
Yeah, no, never.
But what would stop your house from being burglarized, Kyle? Let's hope it never happens. But let's say that putative date comes. What would you argue keeps someone from from breaking into your home?
Yeah, addressing the issues on why they're breaking in the home in the first place. Housing, education, job placement. We have a whole class of folks who've been convicted of felonies in our country who have been deemed second-class citizens, and it's incredibly difficult for them to get stable housing and get good jobs that pay really well, that help them support their families and themselves. And so we have to ask the question, is like, why is this happening to begin with? And addressing those. And that's what CCJRC has been focused on for 25 years, is addressing these causes and making sure there's like commitments from state money into fixing those causes. And not just like, philanthropy is not going to get us out of this problem of like, how do we address crime in our communities? It has to be real investment from the city, from the county, from the state, into community resources.
How do we, and maybe it is just raising awareness, but how do we reach a consensus that the answer is preventative and not reactionary?
For sure. I don't know if there is, I think when we just did a bunch of polling actually in Denver around what do people think in Denver addresses root causes, addresses crime properly. And it was overwhelmingly, almost 80% of folks agreed that if we address root causes, then that will help deal with the crime that we're having. And crime is down. Like, it's hard to make people believe that, but crime is down across the board, even violent crime in particular.
The people who know crime best in Denver, that's where the crime happens compared to, any other rural county here in Colorado. That's where the crime's occurring. We're saying we know how to handle it. It's actually down and we're doing better. But then we've got the rest of the state trying to kind of circumvent that by getting the less dispersed places where there isn't actually crime, yelling and screaming and getting something on a ballot.
Yeah.
I think we need to educate voters sooner. 128 and 130, I think, popped up on people.
Yeah.
What's on your agenda? What are you guys looking at?
For sure. So a few things. We just recently launched a No More Prisons coalition, going back to our roots, back to 1999, where we know it's time to respond to the times.
Right.
And so we will always be doing work at the legislature, and we will be doing work at the legislature this year to help stop what is happening through policy decisions, forcing the growth of the Department of Corrections. But our No More Prisons coalition is also going to be the arm of community to go fight back against this march by Tough on Crime for Michael Fields and Advance on Colorado, to educate community, teach them how to talk about crime in their community. Because we lost the narrative. I think we have the narrative for about 8 months in 2020 around crime in Colorado. But it's time for us to get that back and have a serious conversation about crime and not just pass these ballot initiatives. So we're going to be working really hard on the ground, knocking doors, making phone calls, and educating community with a broad coalition of cross-issues folks: mental health, immigration, criminal justice, of course, community health organizations, and then law firms and media organizations that are dedicated to educating folks. So we're building the coalition right now. If you're listening to this, please go to ccjrc.org/get involved, join the coalition, and so we can educate community all together.
Well, and that's so critical, and is when you boil this all down, you and I can sit here and talk forever, and I want to have you on the show multiple times. If you do it, I think you're great, and I think there's so much more we could cover. But it's, you've dedicated your career to it, and we often pontificate on things, and we say things should be this way, or whether it's climate change, AI, these global things, or these smaller where we talk about humans in cages. And we all have opinions, and very few of us get out and do something. And so, thank you for plugging your foundation. What would be the most direct call to action other than clicking on that link? What do they do once they click that link? What do you need? What's the call to action?
For sure. So the first thing we're going to need is already coming up on us in September. Right now the legislature is about to wrap up their special session to fix all the holes created by HR 1 from the feds, related to Medicare and Medicaid funding, SNAP, you name it. And they're all down there talking about how much money we do not have and crying about it. But in 2 weeks, the Department of Corrections is coming in and asking for $5 to $15 million more for more prison beds. That money's got to come from somewhere. No one knows where yet. And so when that drops, we're going to educate community and ask them to show up. Come down to the Capitol. These JBC hearings, 6 people decide if these departments get supplementals and get more money throughout the year.
And so we have a date certain?
September 22nd, it seems like, is the date for sure, but we'll keep people educated as we learn more.
Okay, and there's a mailing list on the website, I'm sure?
Yep, as soon as you sign up for the coalition, we'll reach out to you and educate you on the dates, when to show up. But no one ever comes to these supplemental hearings. It's usually us.
Right.
They're
tired of seeing you.
They're tired of seeing us.
Right.
So it's time for us to show up and be loud. For 25 years, CCJRC has kind of run under the radar to get as much done as we can. But those days are behind us with this existential threat from Advance Colorado, and the fact that the Department of Corrections isn't being held responsible for the decisions that they're making. And it's time to be loud.
And if you're right about, and you're more in tune with this perhaps even more than I am. So the 8 months, I thought it was a bigger window. Maybe I was wrong. But it did feel like we were going in the right direction. Now the pendulum's swinging back. it sounds like your policy goals are to cut the bleeding and to stop this advanced Colorado. Right. So it's more of a defensive posture than an offensive posture. And so now, when you say, hey, boots on the ground here in September 22nd, on the 22nd, it looks like, that is, it's $5 to $15 million. Now, I'll qualify it by I doubt that it's going to be better spent elsewhere. But even still, let's not spend another dime on putting more people in cages.
Yeah.
So if you're angry, if you're a humanist, if you just want humans to be free individuals, let's take action.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that I follow up with it. I'll see who from my team we can get involved. Let's partner up with this and
let's do it.
Have your voice be heard.
Let's do it.
Kyle, thanks for making this happen.
Yeah, no problem.
Oh,
So great.
Absolutely.
Yeah.